Could this be one of the first very large dominoes to fall? Blackstone, one of the world's largest corporations, filing for default. Is this a business plan, or is it truly blood and distress in the streets? Now, this is definitely something as real estate investors that we need to lean in with and pay attention to. So what unfolds over the next several weeks and months is going to be very interesting, and this very well could be one of the tipping points that will lead us into a greater recession. So put your hats on, get ready for it. There's going to be a lot of incredible opportunities coming into the real estate space. So lean in and check out this interview.
You've been writing about this for a while and how these commercial landlords face the 1-2 punch of remote work, so office buildings are less occupied, and rising interest rates as well. And at the root of all of this is that they often use floating rate debt to finance everything. Why floating rate debt? Why does that make sense?
Well, if you have floating rate debt, it's usually a shorter term loan, and you can sell the building or prepay it. Often floating rate debt traditionally, until recently, has been lower cost, but as interest rates have gone up, these borrowers have had to pay a lot more. They're building buildings that Blackstone and other landlords own where the cost of monthly payments has gone up 300% in the last 12 months because of floating rate debt.
I'm curious about the mechanism here of these default declarations, John. I don't think anyone is looking at Blackstone and thinking they don't have the cash to see this through. This is clearly a strategic decision that somebody in a boardroom is making. Why?
Well, there could be a lot of reasons for it. I mean, they may want to renegotiate the loan. In the case of CMBS, commercial mortgage-backed securities, you basically have to go into default to renegotiate the loan. If you have a bank, you can call a guy on the phone and say, hey, let's talk about redoing this deal. But when you have a mortgage like this that's bundled into all kinds of bonds and you have multiple owners, you can have parties who veto any agreement, and it's just a much more cumbersome and sort of legalistic administrative negotiating process.
Okay, thanks for explaining that. The thing, though, is that as more landlords default on specific loans, they actually regain some leverage in their negotiations. Is that right? So do they want this to happen to some extent?
Well, there are definitely people who feel like, if Blackstone is doing this, and if PIMCO is doing this, and if Brookfield is doing this, maybe I should join them and start negotiating too. So from the borrower's perspective, it kind of gives them like, a tailwind to draft behind to have these big owners. For lenders, it's like, oh God, another headache, For lenders, a lot of them are probably going like, I don't really want to own this property. If Blackstone can't make money on it, how am I going to make money on it? So basically, the bazaar is open for negotiations right now, and people, can talk. But there will be other parties who play hardball. There are also people with sort of predatory or loan-to-own positions out there who may see this as a way of acquiring properties at a discount, taking control, and, there will be losers as well as winners out there.
I think the last time we spoke to you, John, we were talking about defaults, I think, in Los Angeles and maybe another one in New York. Talk to us about sort of the regional uniqueness of this particular default out in Finland. What is the real estate market going on over there? Some, I guess, would have an impression that the Finnish market would be a little bit more stable, but then I'm told that apparently that's not the case.
Well, this specific portfolio has a 45% vacancy rate. So I don't know what kind of buildings there are. And frankly, I haven't, Finland hasn't been high on my radar the way, say, San Francisco or Manhattan or even here in LA are, where, I mean, generally what I've heard is more people have been going into the offices in Europe because they live in smaller homes and it's harder to work remotely than it is here in the U.S. So this is quite a surprise, frankly, to me.
Yeah. Well, John, I mean, I think you need to go talk to your boss and have him get you on a fact-finding trip to Helsinki and a few other Nordic nations.
Yeah, early March. I'm sure the weather is great in Helsinki.